Hey, She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays a Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunswick. Did you guys listen to last week to my short one? I'm so proud of myself. 28 minutes and 57 seconds, yo. Do you know how many I got so many messages from you though this week, like, oh, but I missed my update. All right, here we are. Here are my updates. Isla Mujeres is where we're going. So I don't know. I was just going for a different vibe. So I'm not going to spend 20 minutes telling you. We have a really, I'm supposed to tell you, we have David Michel on today, and we're going to be talking about why solo practices are dead. Cliffhanger. Um, anyways, back to Isla Mujeres. So we started going to all inclusives at Club Meds. They're phenomenal, especially if you have young kids. Honestly, if you have kids at all, I have yet to see any programming that even comes close. Here's why. Club Med starts programming at 2. A lot of all inclusives don't start till 4. Then a lot of all inclusives, they have one kids club, so it's 4 to 12. Do you know a single 11-year-old who wants to walk into a room where there's also like 4-year-olds? No. Club Med has 0 to 2 at some of them. Minimum of 2, then they go like 2 to 4. They have like 4 to 9, and then like 9 to 12, and then they have a teen thing. And they really create this programming where it's like they have foam parties, bounce houses. A lot of them have, I'm not being paid by Club Med at all right now. I wish. Oh my God, do you think I could? It's possible. Anyways, a lot of them have like trapeze and like all of this Cirque du Soleil stuff. They pick locations that are very safe for swimming too. So they're very strategic about their locations. Anyway, we started looking. We've been to 3 of them. And there's one I want to go to that I haven't been to. And I would have honestly gone back to any of the other 3. But for some reason, the week we wanted to go, or like the month we wanted to go, it was going to be like $20,000. And listen, I'm rich, yo. But mama spent a lot of money on traveling in 2024. And I told Kirby we were going to like play it cool in 2025. We were going to like, we spent money my way. This year I'm allowed a couple vacations. Of course, I would explode if I couldn't, but like Kirby wants to make some money move. I get it. I get it. So we're meeting in the middle here, okay? So I was not allowed a $20,000 6-day. Oh, that wasn't even a week, by the way. Here's the other thing. Also didn't include flights. Yeah. So Club Med was off the table. I don't know why. It was so crazy expensive. It wasn't that way when we started to go. I think it gets a lot cheaper end of March or end of April and May. We've done other ones. They're good. Again, I just though wasn't. So you may remember I did 39 days sober from my birthday. And I don't know. I'm definitely back on the wagon. Off the wagon? I think you're supposed to say off the wagon, but in Wisconsin, we say I'm back on the wagon. But I don't know if it's the age of my kids or the fact that we just did this like grand adventure in Japan. And then we have the Hawaii experience too, where we were really adventurous. And like, I'm trying to get this different relationship with alcohol. And like, I don't know. I just wasn't looking for another all inclusive situation where I turn into a complete load at all inclusives. I am like, Kirby goes and works out. I bring workout clothes. I don't use them. I'm like, yeah, I had intention of it. I just start drinking pina coladas because they're a morning drink at like 10. I usually get through 2 to 3 like fiction books on vacation. These are not short books either, people. So I just, my kids play, they make friends, they're fine. This is why the programming is so important. And I was just like, you know what? I kind of want to like have activities. I want to not have that all-inclusive DJ foam party vibe. So that's why we were looking at all these options. And flights, Airbnbs, safety, money, all things taken into consideration, we decided on Isla Mujeres. So we are going to a really adorable boutique hotel that is not all inclusive. It's not on the north end of Isla Mujeres, where like, because Isla Mujeres is this big day trip place for Cancun, and they all hang out on the north side. So we're on the south side. There's snorkeling. There's apparently incredible food and music on the island. You get around by golf cart because the whole island's only like 4 miles long and a half mile wide. So that's where we're going. And I'm excited about it. I'll report back though whether it was good or not. What other updates? Oh, well, this may be too late. If you were listening even remotely in the past, I have a live webinar coming up this upcoming week. Okay. So January 14th, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Central Time, or January 16th, Thursday, 8 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to have to take a lot of coffee for that one because I go to bed at 9. And so this is a free webinar, Behind the Adjustments, How Successful Chiropractors Break Free from the Grind. What else is the description of this? Uncover the insider secrets of how successful chiropractors break free from the daily grind, achieve financial freedom, and create a life where they're not tied to the adjusting table. That's actually really good. That is what we're talking about. It's just ChatGPT for the win as far as like taking big concepts and like making them beautiful in sound bites. So, speaking of ChatGPT for the win, I'm going to throw my guest under the bus a little bit. So, all of my guests on the podcast get sent a thing asking them to send me a short bio. Okay. Well, Dave's bio, what is this? Do you want more steak and less sizzle? The real deal on what you need to do now. Here's where, as a profession, we will be in 5 years, and it may not be where you think. Excellent hook. Like, if we were using that soundbite to, like, really try and get people in to listen, that would be good. But you probably want a bio. So I go over to his consulting page, and he's got this very long "Who are we?" because he's got a partner. He's about partnerships. That's great. So I copy and paste this like thing, and there's these really funny pictures. We should include the link to his bio because there's like these really cute, funny pictures of him and his partner on there, and there's a lot of personality. I love it, but it's probably 12 paragraphs long, and it's all it's about their partnership. So I copy and paste this. I put it into Chat GPT, and I'm like, here's the deal. David Michel is my guest. I need a bio for him. This is from his website, but he's in a partnership with Ed Petty. So please read this and make me a short bio that is only about David Michel. And you guys, here is David Michel's new bio. You're welcome, David. You can use this. David Michel is the co-founder of PM&A, a practice management and coaching firm established in 1988 to help chiropractors grow and manage their businesses. Over the years, David has supported the development of over 25 chiropractic offices through consulting, coaching, and implementation of tailored systems designed to create practice freedom, helping chiropractors achieve profitability, organization, and independence. Based in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, David is dedicated to his family, community, and empowering healthcare professionals to build thriving, balanced practices. Now, I didn't fact check any of that, and some of us know that ChatGPT has been known to lie. So, David, let me know if any of that was wrong. But otherwise, there you go. There's your new bio for when podcast hosts ask you for a bio to read. Yeah. All right. Just one more background before we pray on how this conversations came, because I've known David for years. He is an activist in our chiropractic association in our state, and he came to Chiro WealthCon with his wife, Kate, who's a chiropractor. She's actually going to be on the podcast in a few episodes, talking about how she kind of transitioned out of practice and into real estate. You know, we like that jam. We like that jam. So Kate and him came to Chiro WealthCon. And the next day, we were by the pool, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, Lauryn, this is like one of the greatest events I've ever been to in chiropractic." And I'm like, "Dave, stop, seriously." And he's like, "No, really, this is really needed." So many compliments. I'm like, "Dave, I can't take compliments, but please keep them coming." But we're talking, and he says, he just dropped some line. We're just talking about the profession because I started saying like, well, why Steph Wigner and Elise Rigney and I felt like we needed to do this for the profession, and like where we see, chiropractic's potholes and where we want to fill them. And he said he just was being flippant, we're having margaritas by the pool, and not all inclusive, expensive ones, but, and he goes, "Well, 5 years from now, solo practice is gonna be dead." And I'm like, "What did you just say?" Because I've had this thought. I was gonna call it an obsession, but I really have too much ADHD. I haven't gone down the, like, ADHD rabbit hole yet on this of, like, why don't we see more, like, Brunswick Peichel and Damro and Associates? Like, why don't we see more of that in chiropractic? Like, why do we see it with dentists and lawyers and, like, consulting firms, but, like, chiropractors are all, like, it's us and together? And so I was like, "Well, you know your shit." He's been around since he started his practice in '88, you guys, or his firm. So, like, he's seen some shit. So he has some serious wisdom. You're gonna like this episode. You might not like it, actually. Like, this might be one of those episodes that you're like, "That was a hard pill to swallow," but I don't think it's not true. So we'll have his contact info if you feel like reaching out. I can tell you he is an incredibly what's it called? I'm looking for more of the not just generous. What's like when you're like really giving, altruistic. I think that's the word. I don't think I just insulted him. I think I gave him he's a very altruistic person. So you can email him, and I wouldn't be surprised if the dude emails and spends hours talking to you without any charge or any like kind of thing. He like helped our ass in a situation, and I was like, "What do I owe?" And he's like, "No, don't worry about it. Just a good guy." So let's pray, and then let's get down to beans. Wait, brass tacks? Wait, let's just get down to business. I was gonna business is what I was going for, but for some reason I said beans. Dear God, thank you so much for this opportunity that we have right now. Not the opportunity to talk to Dave, although that's great too. Not this opportunity for them to listen, although that's great too. Thank you for this breath. And thank you for this next breath. And God, it is so funny how the more we are given, the less grateful we are for these tiny things and how hard it is to experience joy in our celebrations. So, God, in this prayer, I ask for one simple thing of just everybody listening, if they just take a breath in this moment, feel their heart, and send up a little shout to you. Thanks, God. Thanks for this breath of this day. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, well, I think my intro was as long as my last damn episode, but without further ado, here is David Michel on why solo practices are going to be dead in 5 years. Enjoy. So we're talking about like basically re-envisioning the chiropractic practice, but it's not recreating the wheel.
Not at
Like,
all.
no. Like, so just for like, just so the audience kind of like knows,
Okay.
I've met you through the CSW, which is one of chiropractic's, chiropractic has 2 state associations. And I
Right.
feel like any state that has 2 state associations, there's like tea and stuff like that. Like
You're right.
one came out of, we think you're doing a bad job. And the CSW was that second like one. That's the state association I'm a member of. A little more philosophical. And you
Little
are
bit.
yeah, a little bit. And you are married to a chiropractor. Okay,
I am married to a chiropractor. I am not a chiropractor, just to be
right.
clear on that.
Are
Right.
you a lawyer? What are you? You're the person I
I'm not a
call.
lawyer. That's a great question. What am I?
What are you?
I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I guess they call them coaches now, but we never called them
Okay, but
coaches.
why are you the person that my state association has sent me to multiple times when I've been like, "Oh shit," and they're like, "You need to talk to Dave."
Right. So I guess geek would be the title. Nerd, I'm not sure the difference between the two, but that would kind of be the title. I'm the chair of our state insurance committee. I was one of the 13 founding members of the Chiropractic Society of Wisconsin. I worked for a company called Petty Michael and Associates out of Whitefish
So are you a
Bay.
consultant? Like, is that your
I'm a
background?
consultant. I'm a
Okay,
consultant. You
okay.
can't use badass, so just consultant is
Yeah.
would be a good title.
I
Yes.
married one of those, so, like, I get
Yes,
that.
that's right.
Yeah, consultants are kind of like I love you during times where you're really needed, but in general, you're not my favorite person to call when I have like an idea. Like when I
Oh,
have a problem, I love consultants
yes.
because yeah, like I'm in like in listen mode, but like when I talk to Kirby about like and he's had to learn how to like take his consultant hat like off for a minute and just
Oh,
be
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But like when I'm like, I'm gonna do this, like consultants tend to be like, well, hey, okay, so did you look into the legal like da 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 da? Are there trademarks on it? And you're just like, you're a buzzkill.
Yeah, can be, can be,
Can
but
be.
we
Like,
like it.
right.
We like we're a little different sort of consulting firm in that, in chiropractic, there's multiple consultants, there's multiple management firms, there's the remarkable practice, there's cats and integrity and all of these different groups out there, breakthrough. Ours is a little different in that we work with the specific client and what their goals are. So I would never come in and couldn't, because I'm not a chiropractor, I would never come in and say, Dr. Lauryn, this is how you should do your report of findings, or this is how you should do your close, or this is what your treatment plan should look like. Or this is what, any of those type of things. It's not my place, first of all. It's your place to tell me these are the goals that I have and this is what I want to accomplish. And then my job is to help you do that. So 90% of our consulting is done on site. So we're not a seminar company. We're not hey, come listen to me tell you how I do a report of findings. Let's come in, you tell me what issues you're having, and then we're going to work with you on those. So that's kind of the boring aspect of what we do. It also entails all of the C's, coding, credentialing, contacting, compliance, contracts with docs, that sort of thing. But that's none of that's the fun part. The fun part is being Nostradamus, okay, and kind of trying to look into the future and seeing where healthcare is going. And that's why I'm on your podcast. You invited me on, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I appreciate your soul. I appreciate your energy. The seminars I've been to that you've done and the podcasts, I love them. I will try to provide some good content for
I'll make
you.
sure.
I'll
This is
try to
what I
do
do.
drop less f bombs than Billy
Oh
did
my
when
god,
he was
so
on the
in that
podcast.
strategy session, she told
Yeah.
us we have to change our rating t or our classification to explicit. She's like, "Lauren, I've listened to enough. You have to be explicit." I'm like, "I don't swear that often." She's like, "It takes one F-bomb and you're not gonna stop." And I'm like, "You're right.
Oh,
I won't."
geez.
So
Okay.
now we're gonna be it's like, as of right now, it's not, but, like, by the time people are listening to this, this will be rated an explicit podcast.
Oh, gee.
I
Wow. Okay.
know.
All
So
right.
now I feel like an obligation to make sure I swear every episode, otherwise, like, people are like, "I came for explicit."
Not
Okay.
exciting.
So, the reason we were jamming at Cairo WealthCon and we were talking, like, so one of the issues that I see in chiropractic is that we have like these next generations, millennials included,
Yeah.
and Gen Z, and then Alpha, who's coming, who knows what they're gonna want out of life.
Yeah.
And it's a different carrot, right? Like, so I
Absolutely.
feel like Gen X and who I don't know who comes before Gen X, old extra old people. Um, they I know I assume like, I don't know, is that you? Are you boomer? What are you? Uh,
Yeah, boomer.
and so like money and like and honestly, this is a reflection of like for any chiropractor who's been at a conference and you're listening to a 70-year-old chiropractor speak, like they're telling about how like they would do like these like health classes every night at
Right.
6 p.m. and
Yep.
like all of these things. And like I've been in the audience just going like, okay, so your wife, like by the time you got home, your kids were in bed. So like
Right. Right.
cool. Is anybody else hearing that this guy or this woman, whoever, like put everything into building their career and worked 80 hours a week and like missed raising their children?
Right.
And so we've got women are 50% of the graduating classes, but I don't,
Yep.
like for when the podcast started, this was for women. And I've learned over time that like the millennial men are just as much being like, I don't want to miss my kids thing. Like I've had men on who are like, oh yeah, I burnt out my first marriage
Mhm.
by doing that.
Mhm.
Like it's
Mhm.
not. And so then I go like, well, shit, because like I'll have new grads be like, okay, I'm starting my starting my podcast. I'm starting my practice, but like I really want like work life harmony. And I'm like, well, you're gonna fail. I don't say that.
But they're not. But they're
Okay.
not gonna fail.
Well, they're not gonna be uber successful. Like
Okay,
who year
maybe by our
one get
definition. No, maybe by our
oh,
definition or my definition, because I am a boomer. My definition, when I was 23 years old, I was $750,000 in debt. I had a house, a wife, and two kids, and I was working my ass off because there's a generational contagion of aberration that follows downstream, and it happens very much in chiropractic, which is why 73% of chiropractors are still solo practitioners. But the new graduates aren't putting up with that. That's
right.
not what they want in life, and that's good. And that's why, I mean, the premise of this whole podcast, why you invited me along, was I said, Dr. Lauryn, solo practice is dead. Not only is it dying right now, but it's dead. Within 5 years, there won't be half as many solo practitioners as there are now, and within 10, most of them will be gone. Just like the podiatrists, just like the dentists, just like the medical doctors. The economics of scale, number one, don't allow it. Number two, you want quality of life. There's
Mhm.
a famous chiropractor who lived in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin. You may have heard of him, but he would get there at 5 in the morning
Yeah, who
and
was it?
stay
What
until
what who was
Clarence
it?
Clarence Gonstead. Clarence
Yes.
Gonstead.
Yeah.
Yes, and he did that because he didn't like his wife. He didn't like going home. I
Did
mean,
he
that
say that? Is he
was
quoted saying that?
oh, yes, yes. He was not a fan. Um, so the dude just immersed himself in his work, which is admirable. It's what my father did. It's what I did for many years. And you learn eventually that that's not a life. That's not the life you want to live. I was 64 before I took my first 2-week vacation. That's
That's
deplorable.
disgusting, Dave.
That's
First of
disgusting.
all, how old
Absolutely.
are you?
I am 66. I know
You
I
took
look
your
like
first
I know I look
2-week
like I'm
vacation?
70, but what's
You do
that?
not. I thought you were, like, 60, and so that's where I'm like, "Wait, you took your
Doing the
first
math.
2-week vacation 2 years ago, dude?
Yeah, yeah, since
Did
high
Kate
school.
make you do it?"
Okay, yes, basically. No, you know what made me do it? If I'm being 100% honest, I had a stroke. And then I got COVID and I was hospitalized for 10 days. And I got COVID because I had a stroke.
That's
Or
not what you're calling the 2-week vacation, your hospitalization.
no.
It was like,
No, that
"Listen."
was just 10 days and I was
Okay.
back to work. Yeah. No, but I said basically, okay, here we go. Fuck this. I'm not gonna live this way. I'm not gonna keep doing this. And my kids are smarter than me. They won't
Mhm.
they won't do that.
Right.
And the associate doctors that we hire now, they won't do it. You know what they want? Number one, they want a meaningful contribution. Number two, they want balance of life, work-life balance. The last associate that we brought into our practice joined our practice, and this was 8 years ago, but joined our practice because we were closed on Fridays, because he would have 3 weeks, 3 days off every week. And that's why he joined us, not because we were paying more than the other clinics around us, because we weren't. But he liked our mission and he liked that he could have 3 days off every weekend. And
Okay, but, like, okay, so for the associates that come in that
yes,
are like, "I am not interested in being a partner," because we're gonna get to the partnership aspect and
yes,
stuff, but, like, for
yes,
the people who are like, "No, no, no, I just wanna be an associate." They like
right.
the work-life balance, but I'm on enough Facebook pages.
Yeah.
Does Kate let you see some of the do the men have,
Oh, oh
like,
yeah.
the equivalent to the women Facebook pages?
No,
Okay,
no.
but you've seen them, right?
I've
Oh,
seen
yeah.
this and I'm
Okay.
and I'm like, oh my Lord.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So I know enough though that like they start by saying, I like the balance and the mission. but then they start bitching that they're not making full-time money. And
Right.
and
Well,
so, like, how have you guys like, how do you approach that conversation?
yeah,
Because if I had a chiropractor who came to me tomorrow and said, "I would like to work 12 hours a week. I
okay,
just wanna show up to serve patients. I don't wanna do marketing. I don't wanna do this. I don't wanna do that." I'd be like, "Okay,
yep,
I will figure out how to make" like, 'cause I'm running a business, "I will figure out an
right,
appropriate salary
right.
that makes that," and they would be like, "Great, thank you so much." But then, guess what? A year later, they're like, "I'm only making 40,000," and I'm like, "You're working 12 hours a week. Like, if you would like to work 15 hours
Right.
a week, we can talk, but don't be upset." And I haven't hired some, but like,
No, I understand.
so
I
like,
understand. And it's
I
gotta be realistic. An associate working 26 hours a week, seeing patients 26 hours a week, should be able to make $80,000 a year. And in their second year, should be able to break 100. They should be able to do that. They should also be able to see 100 to 120 visits a week. And they should also be able to bring in around 25 to $30,000 a month in collections. Those are all realistic
that's the
numbers.
part that
Yes,
most people leave out in that is like, hold up, do that OVA calculation,
right.
30,000. Hold
You
on,
have to
hold
do it all backwards, right? You start with
Mhm.
the 30,000. 30,000 divided by 54 gives you how many what
Why why
collections is
why
it?
am I dividing it by 54?
I'm just using an average off the top of my head.
Oh, of an OVA. Oh,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I did it the other way of you said, like, they should be able to see 125 a week, that's 500 patients a
Yep.
month. So
Yep.
30,000 in collections divided by 500 patients, that's for a clinic that's running an OVA of 60.
Right.
Now,
Now
a
I said
lot
55,
right,
right? So
right, 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 yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
would be upper
But
20.
that's high.
It
So
is.
a lot
It is.
of especially ooh, because, like, so many women,
Right.
now that we have all these like, and then we're pushing these, like, cash practices and these
Exactly.
family practices and these pediatric practices. They
Well,
don't have an OVA of 60, and so
no,
we're shooting
they
ourselves
don't.
in the foot. They have an
They
OVA of,
don't.
like,
And
30.
I'll give you my other prediction, which is within 5 years. So mark this down somewhere in your date book. Within 5 years, there will be no in-network chiropractic benefits other than Medicare and Medicaid. Now, just to frame this, because 55 a visit is a decent OVA. Our clinic does not average that because
Are you in
predominantly
Medicaid?
we are in Medicaid.
Oh,
We
and they
see
pay 24
predominantly
bucks in Wisconsin.
families. We see kids. We see womb to the tomb, but primarily we're a pediatric and family practice, and always have been. But if you look at the national averages for chiropractors in the Midwest, let me see, 2005. So we're talking 9 years ago. The average collections was 38 a visit. 2010 was 36 a visit. 2020 was $40 a visit. 2024 was 43 a visit. So
'Kay.
that's the average collections per visit.
And that's
So
just the is that the Midwest or the nation?
that's the Midwest. That's
Okay.
the Midwest. And it's higher on the coast, obviously, but
Yeah.
but that's the Midwest. That's increased. So over 20 years, that number has increased 13% of what we're collecting per visit.
So
Medical practices have
yeah.
increased 131% during that same time period of what they collect. Healthcare premiums have increased 350% during that same time period. We as chiropractors are being forced out of the insurance marketplace, which is great. There's no problem with that. But it is gonna to somehow it's gonna to some degree drive down the collections per visit. So if we redid those numbers on the OVA, and I know you're a numbers person, and that's one of the things I love about you is you live and breathe the numbers. If I redo those numbers at 120 visits per week at $45 a visit, I'm still bringing in the mid 20s. I still should be taking home between 8 and 9,000 a month as an associate doctor. That's a great living. Now, and that's kind of what associates are expecting. Um,
And is that salary or are you a proponent for salary plus commission? Because I feel
I'm
like what
always salary plus commission, but but we do a living salary. So
Okay.
we generally start around 5,000 a month.
Okay.
So we do a living salary, enough to pay rent, your car payment, and your student loan,
Mhm.
um, and then a percentage. And we like to do a percentage of the overall clinic.
Yep.
Okay. But a lot of offices do a percentage of what that individual doctor brings in. So if you have it split up by individual doctor, that's a great way to do it too. And it can be more incentive for more the alpha doc, right?
Right. And
Um,
I'm glad to hear you say that because I feel like for a long time in my like echo chamber of like the people I graduated with, all of this, all and then like we started hiring the initial way, like when I was like 26 and hiring an
sure,
associate or
sure.
whatever, there was this vibe with new grads
Hmm.
that they just wanted salary. They
Hmm.
didn't want any commission because there was this like trauma that they had been told of like they had heard all these stories
100%.
about, oh no, you're going to take advantage of me because like there were things that happened, I don't know, in the 90s or whatever, where
In
it
the
was like,
80s,
where it's
yeah,
like, you're gonna get 35,000, but you could make 120,000,
right.
and, like, that didn't end up happening, and so I
It
feel like there
wasn't
was the
35,000. It was you started at $2,000 a month. If you were licensed, if you weren't licensed, it was 1,600 a month. And then you got good percentages,
right,
but you were going to really have to bust your ass. And remember, at that time, collections was $30 per visit.
mhm, which is sometimes now some clinics, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
so and that's the other thing
Oh,
is if you're gonna give a percentage, you better know your profit margins, but anyway, so yeah, so it's just one of those things like, hearing you say, I wanted to go down this road of explaining because a lot of people or a lot of consultants or coaches will throw out like an associate should be making $100,000. You literally said like by year 2
yep,
they should be able to
yep,
make
yep,
$100,000
yep.
and the associates hang their hat on that and say
Right.
everything else is bad and then the doctors feel a lot of shame where it's like, how? And it's like, well, this is a deconstruction process. Like our clinic went, like we have been reconstructing for 2 years because in 2021, I started, talking to people like you and being like, well, I can't afford to, I don't have the profit margins
Right.
to like when you have an OVA of 32 and your cost
And,
per adjustment is $29,
right. Right.
you don't like you have $3 to play with in bonusing and things like that. And so
Right.
like a lot of clinics may not be set up. Like this isn't like you wave this magic wand and you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll give you 90,000 because that's what you're supposed to get. Like,
Right. You can't do that. You can't do
because
that. You got to
within
be
years, your
realistic.
business will be out of practice or
Right.
your practice will be out of business.
But you also have to realize that as the clinic director, as the clinic leader, your job is to drive business into the practice. This idea that when you hire an associate, that associate's going to build their own practice, again, is an antiquated idea. Most associates, A, don't know how, B, don't want to, and C, don't have the communicative skills to do that. Now, they will over time, over 3 or 4 years of working with a doctor like you, they're going to learn those skills. But to start with, they can't build a practice. They can barely adjust with on the left side, and we're expecting them to go out and do screenings and do talks and close people. And it's again, graduates now are not looking for that. They're looking for, I want to come in, I want to adjust people, I want to help sick people get well, I want to make a difference.
And I
But
want to make 90,000. Like, and
and I want to make 90,000, but I don't want to be a salesman.
right.
My father was a printer, and he was his whole life. And they would spend upwards of $1 million on a four-color Gestetner press. His job was to keep that press running 24 hours a day. His job was to go out, sell print jobs so that the guys who did the printing, the guys who inked the machines and ran the rollers and did the cutting and the binding, that they who were well paid, that they had work to do. So in a chiropractic office, and I don't want to equate it to a machine because it's not, but in a chiropractic, well, I know some days it feels like it. In a chiropractic office, Part of the job of the clinic is to drive business in to keep those doctors busy. So if a doctor, again, is seeing 10 visits, 12 visits an hour, and they're working 20 hours a week just seeing patients, that's 200 visits a week. That's a decent practice. Now it's hard to get them there unless they have the new patients. Now, after 5 years, they should be predominantly referral. I absolutely agree with that. But the reason that solo practices keep dying is because doctors graduated with this unrealistic expectation that they're going to do it all, or they graduate with this expectation that they're going to go into practice with as an associate, and that they're going to be fed new patients, which is unrealistic in our model, but it's not overall. When you look at dentists, when you look at mental health professionals, when you look at other practitioners, nurse practitioners, MDs, they see what comes to them. And I'm not saying that that's what chiropractic should be, but I'm saying that we have this generational contagion of aberration, that's the way, Clarence Gonstead did it. That's the way so and so did it. But if we really want to extend that out, then let's go back to how BJ built his practice. He advertised the hell out of it. He bought a damn radio station. He controlled the newspaper. He was doing talks all over, not to busy his practice, but to drive people in. And if you are going to run a clinic and you're going to run multiple practices, then you need to be able to generate business. You need to be, good to great. You need to be able to create within your staff a desire to see more people. You need to create within your community a desire for that community to come in and utilize your services. Those are part of building that up. And then you can have an associate who wants to stay a long time. I mean, our associates have been there 12 years and 8 years.
Mm.
And it's
Hey, you're
not,
doing something right.
we're doing something right. And it's not because, no, I'll never say it's not because they're not the greatest associates and couldn't do better elsewhere. They are great associates, but we always provide constant here's your next step. Here's what you can do next. Here's how you can continue to grow in the practice. One of them is very honest and he says, I'm 100% happy exactly where I am. I don't want to see more people. If I see more people, I forget who they are. So I don't want to do that. I'm happy with what I make. I'm happy wherever. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, thank God, I love you. Uh,
Mhm. Yeah,
and he
you
makes
need that.
great cocktails. Yep, absolutely.
All right, so let's get into partnerships. Is that like the
Sure.
legal
Mm.
term?
Sure.
What
Partnerships are great. So a lot of what we've done, I would say the last 10 years that I've been in business is mergers, buyouts, partnerships, and group practices. Group practices are kind of at one end of the spectrum where they've just become big. The Joint is a great example. They have 340 clinics nationwide. You may not like, and I know there's a lot of chiropractors that kind of deride the Joint. Honestly, they fill a void. Would I go as a patient? Probably not. Would I go to McDonald's? Probably not. But my son, who lives in Phoenix and is going to school and plays golf, we went and said, "Hey, go to the Joint. He can go in at any time he wants. It's $26 a visit. He can go at 7 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't need an appointment. He doesn't use his insurance." That's exactly what he wants. He knows what chiropractic is. He grew up with chiropractic
right.
care. All of our kids did. I mean, we were intactivists, and if you know what that term means, intactivist is anti-circumcision.
Oh, that
Intactivist.
makes sense. Yeah.
We were lactivists. That one,
Is that
we were
like pro
anti-vax.
breastfeeding?
No, no, yeah,
Or
pro-breastfeeding.
oh,
Yeah,
why are you adding all
yeah.
these weird terms to
No, an intactivist because you actively promote
Right.
people not to genitally mutilate their kids.
Right.
Yeah, intactivist, lactivist is just somebody who, again, is politically involved with pro lactation. Anti-vaccinist, how about that? Does that
I got that one. I know what that one
anyway?
is.
We were all that stuff. So our kids grew up with chiropractic. They get adjusted weekly. So when he went to Phoenix, he's like, I want to get adjusted weekly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Somebody's gonna give you a
this
$26 adjustment. Heck yeah.
I know,
Like,
and of course he says, "Mom, they don't adjust me like you do," which I'm like,
right.
"Yeah, you're
So
yeah,
group practice
yeah."
is I don't think I understand honestly what group practice is. What is a group
Okay, so
practice?
here's a group practice is, there's another chiropractor in the town you're in, and you go, "You know, I've got enough in common with that doc that we should be in one building." You know, I'm paying my front desk CA $40,000 a year. That's on the low end, right? 280, 2,800 hours a year, $20 an hour. That's over $40,000 a year. The table, we just bought at the end of the year 3 new tables at 18,000 a piece. The more you can run that Gestetner press, if you can run it 24 hours a day, your fixed expenses don't change. So
Mhm.
same thing with an office. If I can find a doc who will come in and work with us, and we've tried with some of the docs even in our town, of hey, merge with us, bring your practice space in, we'll increase our hours, we'll bring one of your staff over, and we'll do that. That's a smart way to practice. That's a smart way to do it. Every time you can drop your fixed expenses, you know, in our
Mhm.
case, our
Your
building is
profitability. Yeah.
expense. Absolutely. And then that does give me the ability to pay the associate more. It gives us the ability to draw out more money. So those are all things that would be a group practice. A partnership would be the same thing, where I go, okay, Dr. Lauryn, I'm going to go in partnership with you. Our partnership agreement is going to decide what our duties are. I've been in a partnership. So we started this. I started in 1984 working in San Francisco with a chiropractic clinic out there was how my interest got piqued on this. And then at that time, I also started working for a chiropractor, Dr. Lloyd Latch, who was a super chiropractor, really nice guy. They had a Gonstead practice. I started working with him because he wanted me to help him come up with their procedures, their protocols, their scripting, and the such. And that was my background was HR. So what I didn't know was that at the time he was one of the largest practices in the U.S. They saw about 6,000 visits a month out of 2 floors across from Union Square in downtown San Francisco. They had 9 doctors. You got exams on the 7th floor, and you came up to the 9th floor for adjusting. They had 27 adjusting rooms. I thought, wow, chiropractors have great businesses. But one
This
of
is
the
what
things,
chiropractors do?
yeah,
Eh.
this is what wow, that's not bad. One of the things that I learned though, and one of the things that I really respected, number one, they constantly did doctor training. Number two, their doctors stayed with them a long time because they treated their doctors with respect. They treated them very fairly. They did demand a lot of the doctors, but they treated them as doctors within the practice, and that's something that we have done since with associates of trying to really position them not as the famous chiropractors eat their young associates, but no, you're part of this practice. There's a lot of expectations of what you're going to do, and you're going to do it our way, but you're also going to be respected for what you're doing and for the talents and abilities that you're bringing. So I think that's a big part of when you're doing a partnership or when you bring in somebody as a partner, there has to be that mutual respect of Dr. Lauryn, you may not treat exactly the same way I do. You may not have the exact same philosophy I do, but we're close enough that we should be working together. We're close enough that we should cut our overhead in half and be in a partnership, and that we can reach more people by doing that. I can take vacations. You know, back in the day when Kate was first starting practicing, if she took a week vacation, it was $5,000 right off
Yep.
the top.
Yep.
It's ridiculous that we still have that same model.
So how do you set up so let's talk about 2 chiropractors who have their own book of business first, and then we'll kind of talk about 2 chiropractors who are, like, out of chiro school or, like, ending an associate, both leaving separate associates and coming
Right,
together. So, like,
right,
all right, let's say you and I both have our book of business in town, and we're
right.
talking about a partnership. Philosophically, we agree. So, like, what are some of the things that you and I would need to, like, sort out and decide in this how this contract or partnership is gonna look?
Right. So before we ever see an attorney or we ever spend a dime, we're going to sit down and we're going to say, who does what? Right? Because it's always about who, not how. So we're going to sit down, we're going to start with that, and we're going to decide. So, for example, I've been a partner with Ed Petty for 36 years, Petty Michael and Associates. He does the marketing. I do legal and organization. He does the staffing. He interfaces with the staff. So we kind of divide it up. If there's ever a point where we disagree, we talk about it and we have a good conversation about it. But for example, there was a postcard mailer that he wanted to do. And I was like, I think that's stupid. I think emailing would be better than sending postcards out to the chiropractors in the state. He really wanted to do it. Good. It's his call. He's in charge of marketing. So things like that, where first you decide who's going to do what and what's going to be their zone, so that they can do that. Then the form of the organization, it can be fancy. You can do it as we're going to form an LLC where we're both members of it. And then we're going to have a separate LLC, that's the management company. And that management company is going to handle all of the group expenses, the administrative expenses. If you're going to buy a building or if you're going to lease a building, it can handle all of those contracts, so that you have actually two separate entities there. It can also be you're going to keep your tax ID and you're going to keep your EIN. I'm going to keep my tax ID and my EIN, or my EIN and my NPI. And we are going to both keep the contracts we have individually with the insurance companies, and we're going to form one LLC that is the administrative LLC that the money flows into, the AR flows into, and then the bills get paid, and then we get paid individually. So you can do that as well. And the only thing there again is you have to agree on who does what. If if Cindy at the front desk screws up, who is going to sit down with her and talk to her? Because not both going to do it, and you can't both be doing it. But who is going to sit down and manage her? If collections are down, who's going to sit down and debug the AR? If you're going to switch softwares, who gets to make the final decision on that?
Right.
All of those things have to be confronted. Once you've confronted those, really, it's paperwork. You can form an LLC in 5 hours.
So the LLC, so like, all right, so we're Brunswick Chiropractic,
Yep.
we're Michael Chiropractic,
Yep.
and we're creating Brunswick Michael and LLC.
Yeah.
And that's not a chiropractic LLC. That's a
No, correct.
management, like, so that
That is
is,
correct.
and payroll of employees is coming out of
Correct.
that,
And
rent
that
is coming out of
LLC,
that.
and remember that LLC can have multiple partners that don't have to be chiropractors. So if you want your front desk to have a 5% interest in that LLC and share 5% of the profits of that LLC, you can do that.
Okay. So in this merger that you and I are doing,
Yes.
let's say that I bring in $2.5 million revenue and have 3% profitability, and
Right.
you bring in 300,000 revenue but have 50% profitability.
Yes.
How are we like, are we like, nope, we're 50-50? How do you start to figure out, and you don't have to attach those numbers, but like, how do you start to
Yeah.
figure out,
Yeah.
like, we're merging patient bases, but we're not the same.
Right.
Like, because a
Right.
lot of times it's not going to be like, oh my God, you collect 500,000 and are 25% profitable. Me too. We should be 50-50.
Right.
Or
We,
in that separate LLC, are you 50-50 in that LLC? Like,
you are 50/50 in that LLC. So, for example, with Ed and I, we draw out 40% of what we generate. Okay. And
okay.
the rest goes into the corporation. We're a regular C corp, so it goes into that corporation. Corporation handles expenses out of that over and above, and then we would bonus out whatever was left from there as we voted and saw fit.
Okay.
So
So
some years
yeah,
it's
you're
great,
forming
some
this
years
new
you have to
thing.
chip in. Yep.
Yep. So you're forming this new thing. And so it's like, yep, I'm bringing a bit. So, like, in this scenario, we're 50-50, but
Right.
we're each getting 40%.
Right.
of what we generate. So
Right.
that's kind of how it works out. I'm like verbally processing this to make sure I make.
Yep.
So like if
Yep.
I'm bringing a bigger book of business,
Correct.
then that
You are ultimately you are making more money.
I'll
Yes.
make more, but it's an equal percentage.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Okay. That makes
Right.
sense.
Now, you can even extrapolate that further. You can say, okay, Dr. Lauren, we're now going to bring in a third partner into it.
Okay.
And you're going to take on more an administrative role, but we're going to pay you a salary for that administrative role because you're going to be seeing less patients. So there's so many ways to do it, and there's so many pre-existing examples of it with Delta Dental and with all of the chains now of ophthalmology clinics and eyeglass places, optometrists. There's so many workable models with orthodontists and the such that it's not hard to figure out how you can do it. Yes, the one who founded it, the one who's got the biggest book coming in, should make the most money, quite
Mhm.
honestly.
Right. Where would you like is there a book? Are there where do you like where would you study up and read on like, well, how did Delta Dental structure their things? Or like, how do you become good at this? Or do you just like, well, you're
I'm
not
a I am a voracious reader, so I'm constantly reading. I love to read, and I love to read Medicare compliance manuals and profit and loss books and the such. But I also like to look at, as I know you do very much so, and probably half of your She Slays audience. I love to look at that guy's doing really well. What are they doing that's working?
Mhm.
You
But you
know, and
can't go online. Like that's not public how a
oh, yeah, no,
corporation
some of it is.
you can?
Yes, it's very much so. Yes, some of it is, especially if it's a publicly traded company. It's very transparent.
So like what website do you go to like look at some of
Well,
the inner workings of like how an LLC is structured and
I
you nerd? You don't know
yeah,
this?
nerd.com. Yeah, go to
Nerd.com.
I couldn't even begin to tell you what
Okay, but it's publicly
it's
out there.
every
So,
day. Oh,
like, if
yes,
you really
absolutely
wanted to,
publicly
like,
out there. Right,
specifically go, "How did
right,
Delta Dental do this?"
right.
It's out there.
Absolutely,
Huh,
absolutely.
huh,
Yep.
nosy little
Yeah,
neighbors. Okay.
I know, right?
So what about, we're both graduating. Like,
Okay,
we're both graduating chiropractic school,
okay.
and you're like, "You're going to Dallas? I'm going to Dallas. Let's" whatever. And how is this different than independent contracting? I'm sorry. You can answer that separate.
Well, no, and that's fine. And you could both be independent contractors. Not really, because you wouldn't have an employer. You wouldn't have somebody who you were contracting with, but you could form a partnership. It's a little tricky when you're both just graduating.
Okay.
So it's kind of like saying, "Hey, I just turned 18 and you just turned 18. Let's get married because we've pretty much got this figured out now." I
Mhm.
wouldn't I wouldn't that wouldn't be what I'd suggest. Could it work? Does it work? Absolutely. Is it fraught with peril? 100%.
So is if you're new-ish, like, is the better so then how do you solve that?
I
Like, if
well,
I'm
number one, I always recommend if you're a new graduate, be an associate with somebody.
Mhm,
Find a clinic that matches your ideals. Find a clinic that is transparent with their contract. And by transparent, there's two things I look for as an associate. When I talk to a prospective associate, I say, look, these are the two things you got to look for. Number one, you have to look for the mom effect, and that is you go in that clinic, you follow them around, and you go, would I refer my mom to these people? And if you go, absolutely, then it's a good practice. If you go, no way in hell, then don't work there. And that could be because they spend 3 minutes with a patient, which is not wrong, but that it may be because you feel like that's not going to work, or because they do a ton of PI and you don't like that, or whatever the reason is. If you say to yourself, I wouldn't send my mom here, then don't work for that office. And then the second thing is, just as you talked about earlier on OVA, I always work backwards. If a clinic says I'll give you 50% of what you bring in, that's meaningless. If you say, hey, Dave, you can go work for General Motors and I'll give you 5% of what they bring in, I'll take that deal. But 50% of what? 50% of we have a wonderful doc that we work with, and it's a cash practice, and they bring in about $80,000 a month. He sees about 200 visits a day. He works 3 days a week. He adjusts animals over his lunch hour. He's an awesome guy, but I would never want to practice that way. I know my wife would never practice that way. She couldn't fit, she wouldn't physically want to do it. So you have to look at backwards. Okay, 50% of what? If they're collecting $19 a visit, well, 50% of that isn't that much. So how
Mhm.
many visits would you have to see to make the money you want to make?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So you just work those numbers backwards. And if they're not transparent with them, huge red flag.
Mhm.
But I always suggest that a new doc go associate with somebody. You're going to get paid for 2 years for learning the ins and outs of it. Yeah.
So if solo practice is dead,
Yes. RIP.
okay, so you associate, but then you're
Yes.
still have to start a practice. So,
Yep.
like,
Yeah. I mean, eventually most doctors want to do that. But quite honestly, most doctors don't want to do that now.
right,
Most
right.
doctors wanna find a clinic where they can grow and where they can be valued, where they can be respected, where their contributions are appreciated, where they have a staff that backs them up, and where they can get well compensated. Those are great things to expect from a
Mhm.
clinic that you're gonna work for. You don't have to end up going out on your own, and most doctors that are graduating now don't intend to go out on their own. They don't.
So, how, as an owner, let's say I have an associate
Yes.
that is wonderful.
Yes.
And so, how do we start to form a partnership then? Because now all
Okay.
of a sudden, now it's a different thing
Right.
where it's not two different books of business. It's like, well, your book of business is my book. Yeah.
Right. So here's what I would do. I'd say, okay, Dr. Lauren, you've been an associate here for 4 years now. You've been doing great. Every year I've given you a little bit better percentages. I've given you a little bit more PTO. I've given you a little bit more bumps. And I really appreciate you and we want you to stay here. And you're seeing 120 visits a week, and that's amazing and that's awesome. And your patients love you. So, what do we need to do to keep you here? What is it that we need to do to keep you happy and keep you here? And you're going to say, well, I'm happy and I want to stay here and I want to, be more involved, or I want to be more active in the practice. Great. What role do you want to have in the practice? Or you say, well, I'd like to, continue to be here and make a little bit more money than I'm making now. I'd like to go up another $10,000 a month or a year. Great. Here's what that would look like. We could give you a little bump on your base, and we can also give you a little bump on your percentages, so that if you're seeing another 10 visits a week, you'll be making another $10,000 a year. Or I can say, well, how about if I let you buy in 5% of the practice? And we can do that a couple of ways. I can give you an increase in your pay, and out of that increase, each month, I will take $1,000 of that, and you'll be buying into the practice. Or I can say, hey, I'm going to give you the opportunity to buy into the practice. Here's what the practice appraises at. I'm going to give you 5 years to buy in. I will not change the price of the practice during that 5 years. So if we can double the practice, if we can bring in another associate, or if we can bring in a nurse practitioner, or we can bring in additional services, and we can double the practice, that doubles your equity in the business. Now I've done a couple of things there. Number one, I've given you a huge motivation if that's your desire. Number two, I've just locked in my security and my retirement. We have 5 kids. None of them intend to be chiropractors, and I completely understand that. With how the schools are now and with the cost of education, I respect them for not doing that. If you
Mhm.
have an absolute burning love for chiropractic and you don't want to make a lot of money, no, it's probably not a bad choice. But if you don't have that real desire to help people and that burning overall mission, then it's not a good choice. It's not a great choice to become a chiropractor. I hate to say that because I've devoted
I'm glad you
36
said
years
it
of
out
my life
loud.
to
I'm
chiropractic.
really
Well,
glad you said it out loud because it is like,
uh, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
I didn't realize it is. It's just very difficult to be it's more difficult to
Yeah,
be super financially successful for the amount you have to work. Like, it's possible, like, there are plenty, but, like, a lot of times it when people are, like, quoting, like, "Oh, well, this person," and it's like, "Oh, they're a PI clinic." Yep.
right.
Like, they're like, so when it's like, "Oh, no, when you want those core values
Yeah,
that chiropractic offers, like, oh, it's work-life balance and, like, the patients, like, and you get to work with children and all this stuff." It's like, yeah, that's got a cap. Like, that's
right.
you're not gonna make $400,000 a year doing that, you know? Like,
And not everybody wants to make $400,000 a year, which is also
right.
100% okay.
Right.
There's
You
there's a
just
great
can't you just
book.
have to know that coming in of,
Right,
like, if you're looking to get really wealthy within
right.
healthcare, there are easier ways to
Absolutely.
do that.
Absolutely. And your Chiro Wealth Con was incredible for that. I mean, every chiropractor should mandated have to attend that.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, oh, just in the 2 days. I mean, they
Mhm.
would have learned more than they learned the entire time they were in school.
Mhm.
And they would have got a perspective that's very different than what their CPA or their accountant is going to teach them. So
Mhm.
I'm really hoping that you guys do that again next year
We
because
are.
I thought it was 100% valuable.
Good.
Okay, so that's kind of what our point is on practices and on grouping up together. That gives me more hope for the future of chiropractic.
Mhm.
As we form groups and as we form chains, okay, Sitting Bull said as individual fingers were easily broken, but together we make a
Mhm.
mighty fist. And this he was talking to the Council of Tribes about how each of the individual Native American nations had to get together or they would be decimated by the US government, which they didn't and they were. Uh,
Mhm.
but it's the same thing with chiropractic. We have no say in the healthcare marketplace, zero, other than in our individual clinics. Once insurance came into the picture, our autonomy went out the window. And that started in the 60s. That actually started before the 60s. It started with Medicare, quite honestly, when chiropractors said we want to be part of Medicare because we want to be respected doctors in the healthcare marketplace, which was 100% laudable. But it started us on a really odd path that now, I'll just ask you, you're a physician. Who determines what is medically necessary for a patient?
In the insurance world or in my clinic?
In your clinic, I know who determines what's medically
Right, like in the
necessary.
insurance world?
Right. But as soon as you sign that provider agreement, and docs don't
Mhm.
get this,
No.
as soon as you sign that provider agreement says, no, doctor, you don't decide what's
Yep.
medically necessary. The medical director of Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield decides what's medically necessary. And if they decide that routine re-exams along a course of care, along a 36 visit care plan, are not medically necessary, then it's not medically necessary.
Yep. And if
If
they decide that the
right,
patient presenting with lumbalgia isn't
right,
better within 12 visits, that you
right,
have no authority to keep going, and in fact, you should have then referred them out by then, like, that's what the care plan like, they're the ones who decide that, like,
right.
so okay.
And these two trends, because I want to bring this
Mhm.
all together,
Yeah.
because I know we've been talking for a couple hours now, but these two trends come together. One, that the group practice is dead. Two, that within 5 years there won't be third-party reimbursement. And these two things are coming together right now. It's coming to a head, and I feel it. I feel it when you see the CEO of United Health Group be assassinated on the street.
Oh,
I
but they
see it
found the
when,
guy, don't worry.
oh, they found the guy. Yeah. I see it when RFK gets appointed to the Health and Human Services. He's not confirmed, and that's going to be a battle. But I see these changes coming, and having being around for a long time, I've been through these changes. I've seen these times where healthcare as a market is going to dramatically change. RFK is saying he's going to embrace alternative healthcare. People are, I mean, we all saw it on the internet. The number of people that said this guy deserved to die. This guy was a drug dealer, just like the guy on the streets who's pushing fentanyl. It's abhorrent, but I understand the sentiment. When you've raised premiums on people 350% over 20 years, even though 93% of the people have health insurance, about 80% are underinsured. When
Mhm.
somebody comes into our office and we take most insurance, they don't have insurance. They
Right.
think they have insurance and because their insurance said we were in their plan. They don't have insurance. We're
Right.
85% cash because their deductibles, because of their copays, because of all of these things. If we were in network, for example, Secure Care, which is the Anthem Blue Cross Minnesota healthcare plan for chiropractors, do you know how much they allow a year?
How much?
$256 a year. Now, now, if the patient calls Blue Cross will say, "Oh
You have
no, you
unlimited
have
visits.
unlimited visits." And
Mhm.
the patient can't call Secure Care, of course, because Secure Care is the contracting agent there. But I remember back, and this is how old I am. I remember back in '68, growing up in Milwaukee, and it was called the Long Hot Summer. But it was called the Long Hot Summer because there were riots that kept breaking out, and there were riots that kept breaking out for two reasons. One, because the Vietnam War continued, and number two was because of segregation.
God,
So
you
my
are
brother,
so old.
right? My brother got arrested because he was marching against the Vietnam War with a golf club in his pants. My brother's also an idiot. He's walking peg-legged, and the cops are like, "What's in your pants?" There's an obvious answer, but he said a golf club, and he ended up being arrested. But that was going in 1968. Remember, in 1968, Martin Luther King got assassinated in April. Bobby Kennedy got shot in June. We've seen this before where people are so mad they will not take it anymore.
Mhm.
And we are getting to that point in healthcare. We're
Mhm.
getting to the point where chiropractors are really almost one of the only answers left
Mhm.
to this. Medical doctors are beside themselves. Medical doctors hate this system. Hospitals are beside themselves. Hospitals aren't run by hospitals. Hospitals are run by insurance companies and by accountants. People can't handle this anymore. 2 years ago, before I was on Medicare, I was paying $1,000 a month for my health care with an $8,000 deductible. The first $20,000 was out of my pocket. Now, I could do it, but
Right.
how many people can't?
Right. So
How
many.
many people have no choice on that?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's crazy. But we we succeed by working together, and chiropractors are not great at that. But we succeed by working together, by working as a group, by coming together. We succeed when insurance companies fail, and insurance companies have failed us. So it's up to us to form groups, to be a commercial enterprise, to realize that in order to do this, in order to succeed, we have to group up. We have to cut down our profit, cut down our overhead,
Overhead. Mhm.
right, smartly, not by
Mhm.
never replacing the carpet, not by never replacing our cracked Zenith 2,
Yep.
but by joining together with two other docs, three other docs, five other docs, 340 docs, 400 docs, like Health Source is doing, or like
Mhm.
Chiro One is doing. Join together so that we can make those decisions, so that we can control healthcare, so that we have a say in it. Right now, we have no say in what happens in healthcare. We have no say in what happens in insurance, and we have no say in what happens in the marketplace other than the individual doctor standing up.
Right. Okay, so you probably have like there's probably a ton of questions that people have because we've gone in so many different directions. What is the best way to get a hold of you or to get more of you to, if somebody's got specific questions?
They can always email me, Dave at PMA Works, Peter Mary Apple, PMAworks.com. As I told you, I don't take new clients anymore. I haven't for about 7 years. I love my clients. Most of them have been with me for a long time. But I'm kind of getting at the point where I'm taking way more vacations now.
Good. We're
And
proud of you.
I got to catch up on vacations,
Yep.
right? So I just saw some of your amazing pictures from your last vacation, and I thought, maybe that's where I go
I
next.
have a ton of advice for Japan. So,
Good,
yes.
good. It
Yeah.
would look amazing. I would really love to do it.
It was incredible. It was incredible.
All right,
Uh,
she slays. Are we
Dave,
good?
we're good. Thank you. I mean, you definitely it's kind of one of those annoying interviews where now I have more questions than when I even started and things like that, where like the number of guests where I've been like, fuck, we're gonna need to do a part two. But like
Well,
thank
I'll tell you through the CSW, I probably get 20 emails a day on these types of things. And as the CSW, we answer them. We don't say, "Are you a
right.
member? Are you this?" We just say, "Hey,
Has
chiropractor."
is the CSW gonna do like have they thought about doing a virtual training on this?
Well, one of the issues is there's no CE for it.
Well, who gives it like
I I agree. Who gives a F-bomb? Yeah, right. I agree. No, it is something that we're working on, which is a monthly management call, clinic management call. And we have so many resources on it. I mean, you're a great resource for it. Lona Cook's a great resource. Jay LaGuardia is a great resource. Ed Petty, my partner, wrote a book on the goal-driven practice and how to create a sustainable long-term business based on your mission. So
Mhm.
there's all sorts of resources on it that we have asked the CSW and they have said yes, we can do it. It's just a matter of putting it together now.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. You were
Thank you.
wonderful. You're wonderful.
It was a real
Not
pleasure
enough
talking to you.
F-bombs, not enough disruption. You said your
I'll try.
listeners are gonna hate me, and I said, "No, they won't." So, all right, She Slayers, shoot him an email. If you can't help, he'll direct you to someone who can type of thing if you have follow-up questions. If you want to continue this conversation with us, make sure you are on our newsletter. Go to our website, sheslayspodcast.com. Join our newsletter. We're sending out, you know, stories and more information like this on a weekly basis. And yeah, thank you so much, Dave.
See ya.
Until next week, She Slayers. Bye.